This is our fourth episode of H3 Conversations this fall, and I've got a real treat for anybody who's listening. We've got three guys that I've known for, I guess, many years now, right? I think I've sat in all of your offices at one point in time, although maybe you've all switched. We're just talking about chairs and who's gotten a bigger chair since I last saw you. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but the purpose of these H3 conversations has been just to get some guys on camera talking about what's important to high school, for the most part, kids who are going through a recruiting process so that they can be just a little better informed. And you three guys are guys that I've known for up to 10 years, I guess now. And I really respect each of you. I like the fact that the three of you know each other, so we can maybe ham it up a little bit. You look like you all combed your hair. And I have to tell you, this was, if you did listen to 2 weeks ago, the three guys that I had on last time were very follically challenged, and you three all seem to have pretty good heads of hair still. So maybe you're living well, or maybe just a little younger. Who knows what that's all about, right? What do you think?
It's running away from me faster than I'd like to admit, Jeff. So I'm trying to.
I just talk to him every morning.
Your forehead's a little bigger than it used to be, I think, Dan. But that happens to all of us. Well, anyway, I really do appreciate it. So when Greg and Gilly jumps on the call here, we'll introduce him too. But really the purpose of tonight, I want people to get to know you guys a little bit. And the audience will be bigger for people who are watching on the replay than those who are watching live. But the purpose really, again, is to talk eventually about how you, what the identity is of your respective programs and how you recruit to that program. I run into this all the time as I'm talking to kids who fall in love, like in the state of Virginia, with a school like Virginia Tech. And the reality is that they just don't align well with what I know that Kurt Elbin and John Sheff and Ryan Fechtow want in that program. And so part of what we're trying to do is identify, who are you guys? How did you arrive at who you are? And then ultimately how you go out and find guys that will help you win more games the way you want to win more games. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, maybe what we'll do first, and we do this every time, is just kind of introduce ourselves. If I had to guess, JJ, you're the oldest. Do you think you're the oldest of this three?
No, Kurt's got me by 15 years.
Does he really?
Oh my gosh.
Way.
I think he recruited me out of high school. That's how old he is.
Oh, geez. I could be the oldest. I probably am the oldest.
All right. Well, you got to go first then. The oldest guy has to set the table here. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to just kind of introduce yourself. Where are you? How long you been there? And how's your fall gone?
Sure.
You got 60 seconds, kind of.
You sure you don't want to start with the head coach here?
No, I want to go with the old guy. He's still got a lot to learn, right?
All right. Kurt Elbin. I guess I'm associate head coach now at Virginia Tech, starting my 7th season. And man, how I got here, it's been a whirlwind. Graduated from Lock Haven University in 2007, had 3 Division III jobs, moved to Division II job in a PSAC up in PA, moved from there as a volunteer to VCU, and then there for 5 years and been here for 7. So that's kind of my story. What was the other part of it, Jeff?
That's good. How's your fall gone? Where are you? It's 39 degrees in Charlottesville, and it's not a great day. This is the day where I really admire what you guys do, especially if you do it in Boston, by the way.
Yeah. We just ended our team segment. So we played our Fall World Series this past weekend. Had 2 pretty good fall exhibition games, played Georgetown and Tennessee, which was good, but we're getting into skill work, small group work, which is probably my favorite time of the year after the fall. So you get to kind of get your hands dirty with guys once you see what they are. And that's where we're at. So knock on wood, been a pretty healthy fall. That's all you can ask for. I think guys would share that, but yeah, that's what I got.
Good. Thanks, Coach. JJ, let's let you go next.
JJ Edwards, I guess I'm the head coach now. So played at Sacred Heart from New York. It's a big state, Tish. It's a big state. Big state. I'm from upstate New York. Played my college ball at Sacred Heart. I was there for 5 years. Got done coached one summer in I guess they're a part of the PGCBL now, but it was the NYCBL. Latched on to coach a kid that played at Wofford, introduced me to Todd, was now Tish's boss, was my former boss, became the volunteer at Wofford in 2011, 1 year as a volunteer, 4 years as the hitting coach, 5 years as the recruiting coordinator, 2 years as the associate head, named this summer the head coach. So, and where we are in fall is we have 9 days left. So we go to Georgia Southern this weekend and then have another week, and then we'll end the week before Thanksgiving. That's when we'll end up.
So I'm not sure it's possible if you were born in upstate New York to actually be kind of like home in South Carolina. I mean, do you have a seersucker suit?
I'm not that. I started eating grits like 2 years ago. So and they got me on like a grit bowl with like chicken and stuff. And I was like, man, what was I missing out on? But it just depends. Down here, I don't have an accent. Up when I go back home, they're like, oh my God, you got a twang, brother. And I was like, I guess it happens fast. So that's where I'm at.
All right. That's good. Tish.
I appreciate that the grit bowl is like your barometer for how Southern you are.
Yeah, I mean, there's some that I'm just not like fried okra. I'm not making that trip over, but like, yeah.
Fair. Dan Tischler, one of the new assistant coaches up here at Boston College. Been here all of 8 weeks, which is really exciting. My wife and I actually just moved into our new home this past weekend, which is awesome. How I got here. Played at a small Division III school out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Franklin and Marshall College. Had a great experience there. Got right into coaching basically right when I was done playing. Spent 2 years coaching at Swarthmore College in Media, Pennsylvania. 2 years as the volunteer working up at Cornell for Bill Walkenbach. And then the previous 11 seasons prior to this one at Columbia University in New York City, working for Brett Baretti. I'm a New York City guy, born and raised in New York. And so having the opportunity to live and work in the city that I grew up in was amazing. And then this summer when Todd got the job up here, he gave me a shout and we connected on a lot of different stuff. And I called JJ right away and said, hey, how bad an idea is this? And he said, you got to do it. And so here I am.
Did I?
Something like that. But yeah, we actually are getting close to wrapping up our fall. We had our first game of our fall World Series today, actually, and we'll be wrapping that up Saturday. That's our last day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, you're the first guy since Johnny Damon that's been traded from New York to Boston. Is that right?
That pathway, it's a little bit more open now. You're allowed to drive north and south on 95. For a long time when I was a teenager, you weren't.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like before we go too far deeper, have any of you actually tried fried okra? Somebody fried okra.
Kurt has, yeah. Kurt was.
I lived in New Orleans for 2 years, so I've had.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Not bad. I've had worse. Worse than this for sure. In the South too.
All right. I just felt like we needed to step up for fried okra here. All right. So I don't want to like make any of you cry or anything. And I feel like the last time I asked this question, I did, but I want you guys to go back to the person who had the most profound impact on your baseball life. And maybe just a couple of things that you learned from that person and how the game should be played in your mind. Like, I'm going to do it the same order this time, but the second question, Tish, you got to go first, right? So I'm going to go back to Kurt on this one, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah.
So who had the most profound impact on my life as a baseball coach?
As a baseball coach.
Well, first off, I'll say this. Every head coach that I work for, I feel like, I think Tish and JJ would say the same. I think you pull from each one of those guys and you find out what makes them tick and why their programs are so successful, and sometimes why they're not successful. But, I mean, from Matt Jones to Joe Shawley to Stiff, he's in Notre Dame right now, and now Coach Sheff. But I would say the guy that kind of turned my head to the coaching side of things was Joe Sherman at Delgado. So I played junior college baseball down in New Orleans, and he's a good old boy, and he sees the game in a really different way, a really unique way. And my first year in college baseball, my first college experience as a baseball player was as a redshirt. So I sat on the bench and literally just sat next to him. And it just really opened my eyes to not only just playing it a different way, but viewing the game a different way. So just the details, just the things that it takes to be a winner. And Coach Sherman is a legend down in the South in the JUCO ranks, and he's had a great career. But just being able to sit next to him on a bench when I wasn't able to play, I knew I was going to redshirt. I just wasn't ready, and it was good. But the things that I learned watching the game with him and a guy that had been around the game for so long was kind of just, I think, what put that desire in me, my heart, to go and coach. So I would say it's probably Joe Sherman.
I love that. It's great. JJ?
Yeah, so I think the obvious answer for me is my father, of course, but I think mine's a little different of a lens there. So my dad grew up as an umpire. So like I saw the perspective of the game from that lens first because that was his lens. Yeah. So he was like 25 years, Division I, did all that, and then had his kids. And so that was kind of his lens of coaching, was just always that perspective all the way through. So I still do that now. I actually made our guys, I think it's funny, but it's good, is all of our guys at inter squad, like they umpire inter squad, we actually bought them umpire uniforms and went to Goodwill and got them like pants. So like if you show up to a Wofford inter squad, they're all wearing like red on Friday and they're all wearing navy on Saturday and light blue on Wednesday. And everybody's like, where's this? And I go, well, I don't want them to be the player. Like they're allowed to be players, but during this, they're umpires. And I just like throw that back to my dad because every step of the way was, you see that? You see where that umpire was? Like that was rushed. Like you shouldn't rush that. Like this is the prevent. What's the rule on that, JJ? What are you supposed to? And like, so that was my perspective of the game. And if you ask, like Tish goes and asks Todd tonight, he's like, yeah, he's nuts about not like being on umpires, but just like that view of the game, because that was my first view. Not like as the player, it was the perspective of an umpire, and then I went as to like the player side. So my father was that because that was the lens that he passed on to me.
That's awesome. Hey, have you ever been thrown out of a game?
I've thrown out once at Western Carolina, and I guess as a Legion coach when I was 21. But yeah, those two.
What did your dad say to you when you came home and said that some umpire?
He never as a player, only as a coach, never as a coach. But he just justified it as the umpire side, of course.
Yeah,
like he just justified it. He's like, yeah, like would you? Yeah, we're throwing you out too. Like you're gone. Like that's not a thing. Like were you right? Yeah, I was right. Nope, I think he was right there. And I was like, okay,
that's awesome. All right, Tish, what about you?
Yeah, I think the easy answer for a lot of people is going to be a parent, whether it's mom taking them to a stadium or dad teaching the game or what have you. But kind of similar to Kurt, the guy that recruited me and coached me my freshman year of college, it just also happened to be my future boss. Brett Beretti had me at Franklin and Marshall. I remember going on college tours, and obviously I was a 6-foot bad body right-hander out of high school that couldn't really spin the ball at all, and so my recruiting options were limited. But I went to Franklin and Marshall and sat down, and I thought I was going to get 15-20 minutes with the head coach, and basically just like hope to walk on. And coach and I ended up talking for like 45 minutes to an hour, and just the attention to detail and the passion that he brings every single day to a practice. It impacted me tremendously as a player, and then spin it forward to going to work for him. He was probably the person in the world that I wanted to disappoint the least throughout my 11 years working for him. And some of that is, when I was 18, he could put the fear of God in you just by yelling. But some of that's also just, you see how hard that guy works. You see how much he puts into every single day with players and how much he cares. And as an assistant coach, as someone growing up in the game and trying to learn it and get better, you want to bring that level of passion to, because you want to match that. You want to match what that person in your life is bringing. And, from my perspective, getting those 11 years with Brett and getting an opportunity to learn the game, really obviously learn the game, but also the leadership qualities and, trying to figure out exactly who I am as a coach. He gave me the space to do that. And, any opportunities I get in college baseball are because he took a chance on a bad body 18-year-old.
What a gift that was.
Unbelievable.
It just occurs to me that when I call you guys with a 6-foot, bad-bodied, can't spin it guy, most of you decide to move on from that conversation. So sometimes they turn out to be Dan Tischler, right? I mean,
Don't
guys, I just don't
kids out there, don't go back and look at the numbers. You'd realize that the hitting coach at Boston College was a very average Division III pitcher.
All I'm saying, guys, is don't give up after I utter the phrase 6-foot, bad body, can't spin guy, right? But I bet your velocity was really good, right? Yeah, there you go. That's
relative. That's a relative term. It's a relative term.
It was 2005. We didn't have the velocity explosion.
Yeah.
Not everybody was, 89 to 93 with a breaking ball. I don't know what pitching coaches are doing.
Yeah. Hey, what's occurred to me that in the 6 coaches that have come on to these first 2 that we've done. So the first time it was Chris Finwood, Carl Nonemaker, and Kevin McMullen. 5 of the 6 of you played at what I would call either mid-majors or Division I's or below, right? I mean, Carl played at Vanderbilt. I think he was a good player there, but like how different it is when maybe you don't grow up in a world of the ACC or the SEC or those kinds of worlds. I mean, you really had to earn everything. I mean, like when I played at UVA years ago, we were the guys who worked on the field, right? There was no crew, right? So you just kind of learn new attributes when you maybe don't fly first class and you don't get the best uniforms and you have to work around mid-major type programs or smaller, at times. So anyway, hey, I would love for the 3 of you, and I recognize that 2 of you are assistants, but you certainly know what's going on. And Dan, since you're new to this school, if you want to talk about back at Columbia, you're welcome to do that. But I'd love for you to talk about what are the pillars of your particular program. What is it that you build your program upon? Because that's ultimately going to lead us to talk about, well, how do you recruit to those things? So it's really important for any of us and these kids that are going to listen to this message to figure out who they are, because that's ultimately how they figure out how they can get to a place where they can be successful. But Dan, if you'll start this time, just talking a little bit about the pillars of the Boston College program. And I don't mind if you go back to Columbia as well.
Yeah. I'll stick with BC because I think it's actually really important for us to continue to get it out there and clarify and make sure that we understand exactly what they are. You got to be able to choose how you're going to lose. You got to be able to choose the things that you're going to do, the things that you're going to prioritize that are going to be non-negotiables in our program. And, that might be different stuff on the mound. Hey, maybe it's going to be big arms. We're going to lose with guys that throw 95. It might be, hey, we're going to lose with guys that throw a boatload of strikes and who compete in the zone really good. Offensively, we're gonna choose to lose being stubborn in our approach and being able to be on the attack in certain zones in certain spots, but being willing to understand, being willing to accept that when the dice roll out, you're not always going to hit the number you want. But as long as you have, as long as you're staying consistent with your approach, as long as you're really good with your process, that's where we want to be. Obviously, like, we hope that a pillar is going to be talented players. We hope that a pillar is going to be guys that are really, really gifted athletes and good competitors. But everyone has those. They have those at Virginia Tech. They have those at Wofford. They have those everywhere in the country. Yeah. So what can we do to add on to that talent and putting a system in place to give guys that structure to understand, how are you willing to die?
Yeah.
And being able to live with those choices every single day.
Yeah. Love that.
Good stuff.
That is really good stuff. JJ, how much, so this would be interesting for you because you're in the first year of figuring out exactly who you want to be and what kind of program you want to be as a head coach. but yet some of probably what Tish was just talking about are things that you.
Yeah, I mean, you make me go behind him. He's just
I'm really glad that I got to go first.
Yeah,
there. I'm really glad I got to go first.
Yeah, I think so when I got to Wofford, and for those that don't know, Tish's boss is my former boss here at Wofford. And our big thing when we were doing it, because I was with Todd for 12 years as his assistant, and our big thing was we have to have a very unique niche, because we didn't think we were just going to roll out and get the best players in the country right away. We went from 20 wins. We're trying to break that. We're trying to get over 30. So we have to have a very unique set of skills. And what we kind of landed on was what we value that somebody else maybe not value as much, to at least get the ball rolling. And it was athleticism. And I know everybody's like, well, we've got to be athleticism, but we went so far extreme the other way in athleticism that we saying like, no, you really need to be athletic and have a high ceiling, because we didn't think we were getting 8s out of high school. We had to go get 5s and 6s and say, hey, what are we going to do and get these guys so we play just a little bit different brand than everybody else, and you have to game plan for us just a little bit different. And for the longest time, Wofford football ran the triple option, and the reason they were super successful was everybody else was running the spread and they're throwing it out. And then all of a sudden you're saying on Tuesday, you got to get ready for this team that's going to run the triple option. And that's the only time all year that somebody's going to do that. And you have to be ready for it and prepared for it by Saturday. But after that, you got to lose everything you learned and get ready for the next team. So that was kind of how we got it rolling at Wofford, in the aspect of like, we need to be different. How do we want to be different? And that kind of goes with Tish. So we went with athleticism. And as we got more successful, our running joke was everybody's like, oh, he runs a 6'6". Like, that's your guy. That's your guy. I goes, well, now, like, yeah, that was our guy 10 years ago. Now he has to run well, but still be a good baseball player. It's just not a one-tool guy anymore. But that's kind of how it goes. And that's going to continue to the same way. I think I get asked that question all the time. What's going to be your identity? I was like, well, I was here for 12 years working hand in hand with our identity. Like, I'm not going to just, hey, I didn't agree anything we did for the last 12 years. So it's going to look pretty similar.
I actually think that's an interesting point too. Like, I mean, Tish, you were saying you played for Brett, right? Like, my guess is the first year or two that you coached under Brett, you were running Brett's system, but by the 10th or 12th year that I don't remember how many years you said you coached with Brett, but by the end, some of the identity of Columbia baseball was what Tish wanted to do offensively, right? And JJ, I would say the exact same thing. Like, yeah, maybe you and TI got together and you figured out what it was that you needed to do to get from 20 to 30 to eventually 40 wins. But like, at the end of the day, this was a TI and JJ strategy, right, to win games in these last couple of years. And that's why you were such a logical candidate, in my opinion, to take over that program. You had an identity. And Kurt, I'd say the same thing. I mean, I got to know you a little bit when you were at VCU before you got there, but like, you've earned your stripes. You've earned the opportunity to kind of to have a say in how this team is going to play. I recognize that there is one guy in the big chair and he's ultimately responsible for that. But you have an identity as a coach. I think of you as a guy who values athleticism and values kind of a blue collar work ethic. But I want you to just talk a little bit about what it is that you feel like is Virginia Tech's identity.
Yeah. Those are good answers, guys. That's tough to follow. For me, when we got here, so you have to obviously evaluate your roster, where you're at, the culture, all those things. And it's been such a whirlwind of years in building this program to the way that, Coach Chef sees it and the way we want it. But the one thing we didn't have workers in our program. Like in one of our 4 core values, it's BIIB, but the first one is blue collar. So like, it starts and ends with work. And that's very cliche. But I think we started to identify that, like, we're not inside the ACC. We're not going to beat UVA on a guy every single time. We're not going to beat the North Carolinas and NC State. So, like, we have a formula, not a formula, but we have kind of a blueprint of athlete that we want. But it starts and ends with the way they work. Like, do they have an edge? Do they work? And then that, to me, ultimately led to having guys that develop. So if you were to talk to any of our staff members, I would think we have really good workers, but also like every single guy, there's a plan for that person in our program, but also there's a path to them being successful inside our offense, inside the pitching staff, on the bases defensively. So when you start to get the right guys that actually work and they work at the game the right way, it allows them to develop. So like now, fast forward 7 years later, I would say the most amount of time, energy, money, effort is spent on developing our players. I feel like the culture is in a really good spot, but day in and day out, our staff meetings, our player meetings, our player to coach meetings, our one-on-one stuff is all built on how are we going to get you better? How are you going to get better at the game? Not only on the field, but off the field. I mean, Coach Chef has really done a good job just getting guys into the community, all that stuff. But that, it starts and ends with work, but it also has to do with our player development. And I would say that's what we hang our hat on, and that's where we're at with it. So, I think it's in a good spot. We're always pushing to get better at it, but that's where we're at with it.
Good answer. Good answer. Hey, some of these, I gave you guys some of these questions ahead of time to see if you think about them, but I've now done this recruiting thing with 300 kids in the last 10 years, right? High school kids going to college, and I've probably recruited 500 Tom Sox players to come to Charlottesville to play in the summer. So I've seen a lot of this, and I know that what kids generally think when I pick up the phone or when I get a phone call from a kid is thinking, I'm identifying with, in the state of Virginia, I'm identifying with Virginia Tech, right? I like that brand. That's a big school. I see them play. That's the school that I want to go play at. So the kid is identifying with Virginia Tech before they really have a objective view about whether or not the attributes with which they've been gifted actually align well with the identity of the Virginia Tech program. Does that make sense? So for JJ, I was thinking about this earlier today, right? Like, somebody says, I want to go to a small private academic school in the South in a great conference. And like, you're the first person I call, right? Always
Right.
been the first person I call, but like that kid runs a 7-1, right? Like I have to say to that kid, like, you may really think Wofford is the right spot, but like, you're a 7-1 middle infielder. That probably just is, it's certainly not going to play in the Wofford recruiting game of 7 years ago that you described. Now, if that guy hits the ball 430 feet, like who was that first baseman that you had last year that was so Galaney or whatever? Like,
yeah,
that guy can probably run a 7-1, although I think he ran more like a 6-8. So how do you go about giving advice to families who are looking at schools? Again, kids are looking at schools. They identify with schools, but they just don't match up. But yet, Kurt, you see guys show up at camp, one after another, come to Virginia Tech camp, and they just don't fit, right? How do you deal with that as a coach? Because some of these kids kind of need to recalibrate a little bit, and maybe they need to move on from the Virginia Tech dream to some place that maybe they more identify with. Does that question make sense to you? Kind of? Yeah.
Hey, JJ.
You want to go? Yeah, my biggest, as I've run into this recently more, especially with the camp side of things, is like we'll get the kids who, because we respond to the email and then they call the office and I pick up the phone and respond to them there, and that they go, yeah, I'm getting recruited by Wofford. And then my whole thing is I have to sit there and go, hey, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate everything going on. I would rather have a terrible 5-minute conversation with you right now saying this is not a really good fit for you and you need to trust me on that, rather than me give you, because they just hear what they want to hear. They're just waiting for that 5 minutes to go through, and they're waiting for you to slip up and say one thing and be like, hey, there's a 1% chance. And I go, so you're telling me I have a chance? Like that is what I feel like they are waiting for. So what I've just tried to be, hey, I want to paint this ugly, ugly picture of what might happen here, just so you're aware. And I'm actually going to follow it up with an email just to double down, because I feel like you're just hearing what you want to hear in this conversation. So my whole thing is like, you would rather have this terrible phone conversation early and say, hey, I know you want an academic school in the South that, you plays good baseball. but you run a 7-3 as a middle infielder. That's not really our thing. And we'd be if we brought you in, you would be in a terrible situation. And this 5-minute phone call would be way better than a meeting at the end of the fall saying, hey, I told you, but now we're here and now you're MFing me out of the way out of town. So that's my whole thing is how transparent do you want me to be?
Did you have the courage or the wisdom to be able to have that conversation 10 years ago, or did it
no chance. I'll just pass it off to Todd and be like, hey, this kid, you got to tell this kid this thing. Like you got to have a terrible conversation with this kid. But now I'm like, yeah. And you come in and you have some walk-ons that you're like, man, I should have told him no to begin with. And I think we probably have that a little bit more than these two guys in the ACC, but they probably going to run into it or have run into it before at the other schools they've been. And I'm sitting there and we had a couple this fall and I'm like, yeah, I should have stopped this before bringing them in 10 weeks in, and they've applied to school and they all say the same thing. No, this is the school I want to be. Is this the school you want to be at if we didn't have a program? Yep. School I want to be at if we didn't have a program. Yep. That's it. And then you come in, they're like, oh, I'm going to go in the portal. I go, what happened to this school if we didn't have a program? And he goes, yeah, but I want to play baseball. It's like, yep, exactly.
Same story, different conversation. Hey, Tish, I would imagine, again, this is maybe not one that you've had at Boston College yet, but at Columbia, you certainly would have had this conversation, right? With the kid who just, I mean, every academic kid in the country wants to go to the Ivy League, right? And they'll eventually want to go to Boston College too, but sometimes it just doesn't fit. Number one, you play good baseball up there. And two, like sometimes the academics just don't make any sense. How do you address that? That kid who just doesn't fit. I mean, maybe because of the identity of the program and he just doesn't do those things that you said are most important to you, but perhaps because of these other factors that would influence admissions at either Boston College or Columbia.
Sure. Speaking on the admissions, the academic admissions piece of it, that's a relatively easy one. You have that conversation, your first phone call or two is like, hey man, how are your grades? What kind of classes do you take? Previous institution, if a kid told me he was below a 3.5 without any honors or APs, like, look, I appreciate the call. Probably not the best fit. Now obviously I think there's a little bit more leeway, not a ton, but there is more leeway. And the support that, we have here is great. But it's also about, calling up high school coaches. It's about making sure that you're connecting with people around that kid that you trust, whether that is a summer ball coach, whether that is someone helping them through the recruiting process. And, I can pick up the phone and call you, Jeff, and say, hey, what's this kid's deal? Tish, he's a 3.2, but he takes some good classes. It's a good school. Like, he's not going to get beat by velocity in the classroom. He has a chance. That changes the dynamic. And, that gives us the confidence to want to move forward. When you're talking to a kid and you need to have the conversation of like, hey, you pulled 3 C's as a junior, that commitment that we had to you is in question right now. That's a really hard conversation, but it always needs to be rooted in transparency and honesty, kind of like what JJ was just talking about. When I was at Columbia, when we would commit guys, we would always say like, hey, this is where, we want you to be here. This is awesome. We're excited. You need to keep doing well. And so there's always that other end of the bargain, that there's always that end of the bargain for them. And it's going to be the same here at BC. We're not able to take guys that, have a 2.4 and, don't take any advanced, we all know the deal. Like it's a good school. And so, making sure that guys are keeping up their end of the bargain, but like JJ said, just being super transparent and, the older you get, I'm not sure the easier those conversations get, but maybe the more willing you are to have them. Yeah. And have a tough conversation with the kid, but you hope that at the back end of it, they appreciate the honesty and can move forward and find the best fit for themselves.
Gosh, I think from the kids that nobody wants to have that conversation. The JJ, you think so you say there's a chance comment. That's so true, right? I mean, the 1% chance that maybe even less than 1% chance that you're going to be interested in them at Boston College. They're going to take that and they're going to tell all their buddies that, Boston College is interested in them. That's just the way it is when you're 16 or 17 years old. But I do think just going ahead and swallowing the medicine at this point in time and getting it over with and helping that kid kind of straighten it out and kind of narrow his search to something that has a greater chance of a successful outcome. So
no doubt. And that's also where, the three of us, having been in coaching for as long as we have, like, we all have networks of people that we can touch base with. And so if a kid, is just short for us, like, I'm more than happy to pick up the phone and call some other guys at some other schools and say, hey, this kid might be a fit. Like, it's worth looking into. And, you never know where that kid might end up and who they might be able to help. And, being able to help a young person, like, live out their dream of playing college baseball, that's part of what we're doing here. Like, that's part of the gig.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes to these kids, it feels like a transaction, right? Well, you guys are good guys who've been in the shoes of all these kids, right? You weren't necessarily the most heavily recruited guys coming out of your high school seasons, right? I mean, again, six flat, bad body, can't spin it really well. I'm sure Boston College was knocking down your door at one point in time. Hey, Kurt, what do you think about all this stuff? I mean, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, they hit it on the head. I think for us, like, the conversations have changed, especially with the recruiting rules, how they have evolved and changed, and especially with just how the portal works. So, like, basically, if we have a kid that really likes us, but it's not a fit or it's not a need, you have to be honest. You have to tell them why. We want to tell them why. And sometimes a lot of it is fit. We might already have certain guys in the class, or we have a guy that's, a starter that's a freshman, right? Those things happen, but we never want to close any doors, and we certainly don't want to burn any bridges. So I'm, just like Tish said, extremely, especially if we like the kid and he's fringy, makeup wise, if you like the kid, you're going to do everything you can to help him, but it is really important for them to know why it's not a fit or why you don't have that need. And then in addition to it, I think it's also important that these kids, especially in the camp scene, they get around your players, but they watch you play. If they were to watch you play, like, the first thing I ask a kid, if he's like, I get on the phone or there's a contact that wants me to kind of just do some research on a player, first question is, hey man, obviously it's an academic classroom, the general talk, but it's also, have you seen us play? And I think if kids can answer that and kind of see themselves, hey, look, like, every player that we commit, and even if they're a young kid before the rules change, like, our whole thing is they have to fit in at one of your practices doing something, whether it's run, hit, defend, whatever it is, they have to fit in your practice right now. And if they can do that or they can't do that, I think it's a little easier of a conversation. So, you got to be transparent. You certainly got to be truthful, because we might end up getting that kid from a mid-major in the state in the portal. So right. Those are all things. I agree with what Tish and JJ said, but it does. You have to be honest, and they got to know what they're asking about. I think that's big too.
Yeah. All right, back to the identity a little bit here. So you guys all talked about kind of, kind of what you're after. What are the resources that you are using? And some of you have talked about it. Tish, we talked I've talked to all you guys about players periodically. You have ranking services out there. You've got video that PBR or PG. I mean, all these kids are wondering, what do I do to show these coaches what I can do? And what, as coaches who've been around the block before, do you really trust? I know you trust your eyes, but sometimes in a world where things are happening really fast in the month of June, where everybody's in the portal and you got to fill your roster for the fall, you just got to do things faster than you normally would. What is it that you trust, and what would you encourage these kids to be doing in order to be able to show you that they have the attributes that align with your pillars? If that makes sense. JJ, you want to go first there?
Yeah, of course. I think we are, and I'm just talking to Wofford. The answer is all of it. Is that an acceptable answer? All of it. So it is video. It is video, but at the same time, like, I think a lot of people are like, well, high school stats don't matter. And I go, they do if they're an outlier. They do if they're an outlier. If you look up and you go, hey, he's a 6'6" runner. And you're like, hey, send me your high school stats. And he's like, well, I hit 288 and struck out 30 times and walked 20. And you're like, okay, like, there's a disconnect here. Like, you just want to check as many boxes as possible because as we go through it, and it does speed up on us. You're telling, in the summer, it gets a little sideways out there, and you're just like, okay, we're going to look at the video. We're going to check out Synergy if they're in the portal. We're going to see high school video. We want to see them with our eyes. We're going to call the high school coach, and we're just saying we want all the information until we make the decision. We're not going to stop collecting information until that time. So we'll use, if it's PG stats, if it's PBR video, if it's calling his high school coach and say, hey, can you send us over your high school stats? Because we just want it all to check, and not necessarily one is the end all be all for us, but like you just want to make sure they're all lining up. Oh, he's a 6'6" runner. He's a 6'6" running, left-handed hitting shortstop who can really throw across the infield. And you're like, okay, what am I missing? Let me see your high school stats. Oh, you hit 220. That's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing. So I think the answer is it's a little bit of everything, and we're going to keep grabbing, at least from our standpoint, we're going to keep grabbing data and information until you're like, okay, it's time to make a decision, and then we lay them all out there and say, this is what we have.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Tish, what do you say?
Totally on board with everything JJ just said. Obviously wanting to get as many different data points, as many different sources of information as you can. The only thing that I would add on top of that is, for us up here at Boston College, what we've been talking about from a recruiting standpoint is wanting to keep the best players in the area home, wanting to keep the best guys from New England here. And so it's being in touch with as many summer coaches as we can. It's trying to really cultivate those high school coach relationships, cultivate the facility relationships. And, obviously all of those people have different motivations and have different factors that go into kids that they work with going to college and playing. But ultimately, trying to have as many irons in the fire and, as JJ said, all of it. That's just the nature, I think, of Division I recruiting now. And that's true, in the SoCon, that's true in the ACC. I think it's going to be true across the country.
Love it. Love it. Kurt?
Yeah. All the stats, the numbers, the things that you can get online, certainly I think are important when you don't get that FaceTime with a player, because numbers are numbers. Now, I don't know if I trust a lot of the PG stats or the PBR stats, because it depends who puts them in. I mean, there's some kids that are 15 that are at the end of a 10-hour day, and I'm sure they're not paying attention on Lake Point 14, at midnight. So the one thing that we go by is like, you need to see them play well. You got to see them play well. Hitters hit. And if I go and watch a player, even though his numbers are X in high school, and the summer coach loves him, and the travel coach that he played for last year loves him, and maybe, we have another contact that is, raves about the player. If we go and see that player and they do not perform, not in just one instant, but in several games, and we get that FaceTime up close and they do not perform, probably not moving forward, unless there is just a tool that we cannot ignore. So for me, it's the numbers, it's the conversations, it's your contacts, but every single hitter that we've ever brought, for me specifically speaking, that we've ever brought into Virginia Tech, I have seen them hit in a game with my own eyes. So that is something that we'll never walk away from. And look, COVID shrunk that, right? That was tough back in the day. Like you couldn't go and see them. And now with the portal, you're making decisions on guys that you have to rely on synergy. I think it's a little easier at this level, D1 to D1 or D2 to D1. But if you're talking about the high school kid, like, we need to see him play well.
I heard a coach say to me a couple of years ago, in a perfect world, he sees 25 at bats. I don't know if any of you have that number, and I don't know if that's possible. I mean, obviously that's ideal, between showcases that you would watch and high school games that you'd watch and maybe at your camp. I would imagine most of you can look at a kid swing the bat 3 or 4 times and try to and have 80% assurance that, I mean, you know whether that guy is going to have the bat speed, the strength, the things that you want. What you may not know whether he can adjust and whether he's competitive and those kinds of things. And I would imagine just more data is what you want, right? And so utilizing your resources is how you do that, I think.
No doubt. And I could not agree with a person more, Kurt. Like, you go and you watch a kid hit and like they do or they don't.
Yeah.
And like you just get a gut feeling on a guy. But you got to see it. You got to see it to have that gut feeling.
I think the other thing too, and it works both ways, negatively and positively. Like I could go see a kid once, and I've done this a lot, and I've missed on a lot of guys. But for me, there's non-negotiables in recruiting, and I think these guys would probably agree with it. If I see a kid swing and miss a fastball several times in a game, and I'm talking like average fastball, dead zone fastball, 85, 87, and he cannot get on time with it, I cannot get that out of my mind. I think a lot of pitching coaches are probably the same when it comes to guys that scatter the zone. So I think it works both ways. And unfortunately, if I see a kid 2 times, 6 at-bats, and he's swinging and missing fastballs, I'm probably not going back in there.
Yep.
So
that's great to hear. It's great to hear. All right, I got 2 more questions for each of you. That's going to take us up to the 8:30 mark. Okay, so I'm going to give them both to you ahead of time because the second one you'll want a little time to think about it. All right, so I would love for you, and you don't have to go into great detail, but you can, right? The highs and the lows of your coaching career, if you're willing to share it. The moment in your coaching career that you would consider the ultimate high. It doesn't have to be a win. It might be a recruiting win. It might be when you got your job, JJ. It could be anything, but also the lows. I think it's important for these guys to realize that this isn't all fun and games, right? The second question is, and H3 started 12 years ago. Brian O'Connor, the current president of UVA, Jim Ryan, and I sat down around coffee, and we were like, let's create an entity to fix problems in youth sports in Charlottesville. That's how H3 started, right? The current president of UVA wrote our bylaws. He was a lowly law professor at UVA at the time. That's how I got started. So I want you guys to fix a problem in the college game. We all see them, right? And what is the one that you'd like to fix? All right. So highs and lows first. Who wants to go first? Dan.
Sure. I think a high for me was our 2015 team at Columbia. That was the third of 3 consecutive championships. We earned the number 3 seed at the Miami Regional. We won Friday, beat a really good ECU team, lost on Saturday night to Miami, rolled out Sunday. We knew that we had a long road ahead of us. And beat FIU Sunday early afternoon, and then rolled out and beat Miami 3-1 on Sunday night to force a Game 7. I don't remember much from the game. It was a long day of baseball, but I remember the feeling of going to a Denny's at 1:00 in the morning with a group of guys that had just accomplished something that very few people in the country probably thought we could. And man, just special, like really like goosebumps levels of special.
That's awesome.
I will add one more high because these guys.
You can do 2 highs. That's fine.
I'm a talker.
Yeah.
Our 2022 team. A lot of people know that the Ivy League presidents chose not to have sports in 2021 because of COVID, and that was a terrible decision. Brutal season for us, sitting on the couch and watching everyone else play college baseball. We come back, and in 2022, we end up putting together the nation's longest winning streak that year, either the first or second longest winning streak that year, end up losing Game 1 of the Ivy League Championship Series to Penn, and then winning the next 2 to make it to the Blacksburg Regional. And we rolled out Friday afternoon. We earned a 3 seed. Rolled out Friday afternoon, and we beat a top 10 overall pick in Gabe Hughes from Gonzaga. And just like the resilience and the toughness and the love that those guys had for each other, that 2022 team, that might be my favorite team I ever got to coach. So I would say that whole year was a high.
And I'll count the 2021 season as your low, okay? So you don't have to go there.
I think that's fair, man. Yeah, that was really hard. And
hey, I have a question. How many Ivy League teams have even gotten a 3 seed? Is that common?
No. So the 2014 Columbia Lions were the first. Then the 2015 Columbia Lions were the second. Yeah. 2017, I believe that Yale did it, going out to the Palo Alto Regional. I don't think Penn was a 3 last year.
Yeah.
So there have only been 4, and teams, the Columbia teams that I got to be around were 3 of them. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. All right, Kurt, your turn.
It's funny. This is ironic. So my low actually matches with Tish's year. I don't know if you knew this, Tish. So in 15, we had lost like 7 in a row at VCU, ended up winning 16, won the Dallas Baptist Regional. We were matched up with you guys. I thought we were going to play each other, man. That was wild. Down in Miami, we were watching that. That was tight. So we ended up going to Miami and playing in that. But our low was, I'll never forget this. And this, I was struggling with some things. I was a first time dad. My son was like 4 months old, 5 months old. We had just lost to Norfolk State, and Coach Stifler, I love him. I owe a lot to Coach Stifler, but he was trying to get things going. And at the time, it was tougher to work for him. And in 2015, we lost like 11-2 on the road on a Tuesday at Norfolk State. And I was questioned a lot, away from my family. My wife was a full-time pharmacist. Long story short, I was battling a lot of emotions. Boys rallied together, ended up making it a high, but I was really struggling there. And something that had changed, we had a staff meeting and kind of just, myself, Steve Hay, ML Morgan, we just kind of sat down and stiff and, turned a really bad stretch of baseball into some good stuff. That was a low. And a lot of it was just off the field stuff. I think being a dad, being a father, and coaching baseball at a younger age, it's a tough thing to kind of wrap your head around because of so much that goes into it. But that was a low for me. That single instance, and I remember just because I was fighting a lot of things. And then the 22 season for me, and a lot of it was just we had a really good team and played a really good Columbia team in our regional. But the reason I bring it up is, when I got the job here as the hitting guy, all my contacts, like it looks good on paper, right? Like you're joining a Power 5. But there was a lot of, when we got here, a lot of you guys can't win at Virginia Tech. No one wants to go to Virginia Tech. There was a lot of, of doubting going on. Not only just, I think in the collectively in the baseball world, but just around here. I think it was always looked at as just kind of a very blah program. And I was really proud of the guys that took a chance on our staff and some pretty high profile players that kind of rolled out that year. But that was a pretty fun year for me, the 22 season. It was one of the most enjoyable group of guys that I got to go to work with, and all those guys really just bought in the development scene. So that's what I got. 15 before, we went on a little run, and then 22 was a pretty good high for us.
That's awesome. And I tell you what, I appreciate you. And I've had this conversation with each of you at various times in the last decade, but just being willing to share kind of your circumstances outside of baseball. Like, I mean, sometimes these 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids wonder, why the heck has the coach not texted me back? Well, you know what? The coach actually has a couple of kids, and he's trying to spend a little time with them. They're humans too, right? So I think this is actually helpful for them to hear that, you're not just playing games with them. You know what I mean? Like, we have things to deal with too. JJ, what's up?
I don't know if I want to start high or low, but I'll go low. So in 2016, we came off our 39-win season, which wasn't a thing at Wofford College in 15. And 27-year-old JJ Edwards thought he had the old hitting thing figured out, which we all know that's not really how it works. So we went from hitting like 305 to 250 and get punched right in the face. So that was my low of like the most humbling. Hey, we're going to hit. Why do we hit? Because we hit. Like, that's what we do. And then the next thing you're like, no, you stank, man. Like, you are a bad hitting coach right now. So I think 2016, I think we were like 30-28, but it was just, we were supposed to hit. Well, why are you supposed to hit? Because we hit, and then we didn't hit. So I think that was humbling, low. Look yourself in the mirror, figure something out. Like, how do you become more consistent at your job and your craft? Like, you just can't roll the balls out and be really good at it. And I think that goes into Kurt's point of like, hey, you got to buy into the development piece. It's just not going to happen. You need to, make it happen. And then in 2021, we won our regular season championship at Wofford for the first time ever. And, I just remember hugging Todd at the time and just being like, I came to Wofford, we were averaging 21 wins.
Wow.
And I was like, and then we're preseason 8th every year. And that's when we used to have like 10. And I was like, preseason 8th. And one year we're like, oh, we're 7th. And then we would finish 3rd. And the next year they would project us 8th again. I was like, I guess they don't think we can do it. And then it finally clicked. So that 21 team of just being, and it wasn't the best team we've ever coached. And we got, we had to win 2 against Mercer at home to do it. And it was just one of those things you're like, yeah, we put a lot into, getting this program from 20 to, 36, 37, and even being in the sniffing a conference championship regular season or postseason. That was that was the high for sure.
That's awesome. Hey, you've won 36 games a number of times since, man. So feels that's kind of the standard now. That's awesome. All right. You're not going to have time to fix the problem, but because I like to hear of the problems, like literally 2 years ago, I said, there's no way for the underprivileged kid to get seen to play college baseball, to know that if he wants to go to Wofford and he makes less than $75,000 a year, whatever the number is, he probably comes for free, right? So we started doing free showcases. We just raised money and we found a bunch of generous people that will help pay for these things. So we're always trying to identify the problems because we want to fix things, right? We're doers. So I want to hear each of you tell me one thing that you'd like to fix. And then I may call you back another day and have you help me figure out how to fix it. Okay. All right, JJ, you got to go first.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm falling under that category, but I think I don't know if I'm falling under that category, but my big thing is what Kurt was saying before. I am going through right now in the aspect of, we have 2 kids under 2 moving next month, first time head coach, all rolled up into one. And I was like, I don't know if there's enough hours. Like, I'm just really comfortable at 4 hours and 37 minutes on my Whoop band. Like, that's where I'm living right now. And I am just crushing it. Like, I'm crushing it. My wife was sick last night, the last 2 nights. She's like, are you sure? I go, 1, there's not another option. And 2, like, I am crushing 4 hours and 30 minutes. So my big thing is, when I first got in it and the NCAA kind of tightened the reins and said, hey, more work-life balance, because it was just the Wild West. It's like March 1 rolls out, November, whatever it was at the time, signing day, shuts it down. And I go, my big thing at that point, I was like, why are you holding me back? Like, I'm an animal. I'm going to live on the road. Tish and I are going to sleep on the floor of each other's hotel room. Like, that's where about. And now you get to this side of it and you're like, yeah, work-life balance is good. Like, work-life balance, like, I want to stay married. Like, I want to see my kids. Like, so I think that is the ever evolving juggling act that we have to do. And it's something that I feel like there's not a blanket statement, but it's always something that we need to keep working on. And you don't realize it until you get in the moment of, you're like, hey, I'm 36 with 2 kids and have a lot of stuff going on in my life. At 24, I thought I did. I didn't. I could do whatever I wanted anytime, and I'm an independent dude. I go, that is not the case anymore. So I just think that is my big thing, that I was like, hey, like, what's the best bet? I want to be really competitive and a really good coach, but at the same time, I am a father and have 2 under 2, and I do have to be a husband and be really good at there and all that stuff. So that's and Kurt, like, he tells me that, I'm like, yep, right now I'm in there. I'm what he's saying is, that's what I'm living.
Well, I think 2 of the 3 of you are sitting in your office at 8:30 at night, so I'd really like to get you out of here on time. But so I'm going to start working.
I can't do it at home. I could not do this at home.
I know, I'm at home, but my kids are
too many screams.
My kids are
kids screaming.
So number 1, I'm going to start working on the 26-hour workday so that you can spend 2 extra hours in bed. Okay, if that's what you want.
Fair.
2, like, I will say, I'm on the board of the UVA hospital, and one of the things that we're dealing with is mental health right now, right? I do think, kind of, how do we deal with that in the coaching profession? You've got the highest of highs, right? I mean, this is an adrenaline business, right? But there is a reality to your lifestyle. So, all right, we're past at 8:30, but I do want to give each of the 2 of you others do you have a problem that you want to fix in the game? Kurt?
Oh man, I got a lot of them, but nothing like, yeah, I think my thing is, I do think the regulation of NIL/portal and transferring, I think it's just creating it's a bad mix. I do. It's not what we signed up for. I don't know how you fix it. I have thoughts. They're going to sound stupid if I roll them out right now, but I don't think the rules that were put in place and the things that we're trying to do, I think players absolutely should be compensated if they make the school money. But I think the way we're going about it, I don't know if it's right. I don't. I think the scholarship thing needs fixed. I think it matches, a lot of, or it should match the way you enter the NIL world, but it doesn't. And that's my thing. I just think the finances of college baseball need to be fixed. That has nothing to do with recruiting. That probably doesn't help anybody.
It helps. I like to hear that, and I want to help fix that problem too. So, Tish, you got anything?
Kind of just piggyback on what Kurt said. Major League Baseball needs to step in, fund 20 scholarships for every single program at the Division I level. Quit messing around. We are essentially the minor leagues now. It's a 20-round draft. They are contracting the minor leagues. High level Division I and even Division II and III college baseball are the minor leagues. Players are developing. Players are getting better. Let's find a way to get more kids opportunities, and let's find a way to get more kids from less privileged backgrounds opportunities. Make scholarships more available.
I love that. Tish, can you meet me at the Major League Baseball office tomorrow morning at 8:00 in New York? We'll get this.
I will drive down there. It'll be nice to be back in the city, get a proper bagel, and be ready to roll.
A proper bagel. Einstein's doesn't work for you,
my wife referred to a bagel I brought her over the weekend as round bread. So yeah, we're still working through some stuff up here in Boston.
Good for you. Hey guys, I can't thank you enough. This was awesome. And frankly, it's just nice to spend a little time with you and see your faces outside of me calling with a need. But you're awesome men. I said this to the 3 guys that I was with last week. Like when my son was going through this process, and I guess Tish, you were probably the only one that I talked to at that time, but somebody said, choose a man that's going to help you finish raising your son. And all 3 of you are those types of guys. You're the types of guys that I'd want helping to raise my son. And so for whoever it is that I'm talking to, you're the types of people that I want talking to the guys that I care about. So really appreciate it. Go home, hug your wives, try to put your kids to bed. Tish, get unpacked a little more. It looks like you're doing a pretty good job there. So, all right.
Good seeing you, boys.
Help you guys.
See you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.